Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host Mitch, glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today's episode is going to be a $50 deck tech. When I say $50, I mean that is an overall deck cost. Both shipping and commanders that are $10 or less are going to be included in that cost, but basic lands will not be. Decks on this channel are built to be fun, inexpensive, and focused. If you want to learn more about what a focused commander deck is, check out this video here. On this deck tech, I'm going to take you through its strategy, the tactics, and how this deck wins. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And while you're at it, subscribe and review our podcast as well. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Also, make sure you check out the Porcine Stand, our limited edition playmat on Kickstarter that's only available for the 30-day campaign. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCGplayer affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Today's episode comes to you courtesy of Irvin. Irvin has been supporting the show for over a year now as a general tier patron. I really couldn't do this without amazing patrons like Irvin. And today, Irvin's going to handle the intro for me.
Hey Mitch and viewers, this is Irvin from Tennessee, and for my deck tech, I'd like for you to build around the First Sliver, using its Cascade effect to swarm the opponent and just overwhelm them.
So like Irvin said, today's deck tech's going to be built around the First Sliver. It's a 7/7 sliver with Cascade that costs Wooburg. It has sliver spells you cast have Cascade. So as Irvin said, this Cascade effect can easily allow you to overwhelm your opponents with a swarm of slivers. When the first sliver's in play, things can get out of hand in no time. Casting one sliver can allow you to cascade into another one, and so on and so forth. This allows you to chain sliver after sliver and flood the board quickly. And all those slivers are going to be buffing each other in the process. So our strategy for this deck is very simple. We want to get the first sliver out and start casting slivers. The more slivers that we cast, the more we cascade into, and the more that we get in play quickly. And then how do we win with this deck? We're going to overwhelm our opponents with our free sliver army. Okay, so they're technically not all free, but the amount of slivers that we can get in play for free with this deck is absurd. As with all Commander's Quarters decks, I'm going to take you through 10 different tactics that show you how the deck works and how we're going to win with it. So let's start things off with tactic number 1, the first fixings. First up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble, which we can pay 2 and tap to sacrifice and get a basic land into play tapped. Next up, we've got 3 ramp spells on turn 2 with Farseek, Rampant Growth, and Edge of Autumn. Farseek can get us a Plains, Island, Swamp, or Mountain into play tapped. And then Rampant Growth and Edge of Autumn can get us any basic land into play tapped. Next up, there's Cultivate, which is going to get us 1 basic land into our hand and 1 into play tapped. And then Grow from the Ashes can get us 1 basic into play untapped or 2 if we kicked it. Next up, there's Explosive Vegetation and Circuitous Route, which get us 2 basics into play tapped. And finally, because this is a 5-color deck, we really need to make sure that we can fix our mana. So we're going to be running Renegade Map, Traveler's Amulet, and Wanderer's Twig, which don't ramp us, but they do help us fix our mana by getting us a basic land into our hand. But outside of these spells, we've got other ways to help ramp us too. So now let's move on to tactic number 2, Sliver Supplies. First up, there's Pillar of Origins, which can tap to add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool, but we can only spend that mana on slivers. Next up, we've got 2 of our most valuable slivers in this deck with Gemhide and Mana Weft. Both of these make it so that our slivers can tap to add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool. These can make it really easy for us to get our commander out early and really go off. Just a quick note before we move on from these 2 cards. Yes, I'm aware there's a difference between these 2. Gemhide Sliver affects all slivers and Mana Weft Sliver only affects our slivers. If you are playing against an opponent that has either slivers or changelings, you need to realize this. But for the sake of brevity in this deck tech, I'm not going to go through every single individual difference. I'm just going to say that these 2 cards are essentially the same. There are other cards like these that I will group together, so just keep that in mind. Another sliver that can help keep things going is Basalt Sliver. It says all slivers have sacrifice this creature, add black to your mana pool. But after we fixed our mana, ramped, and gotten our commander out, what's next? Let's find out in tactic number 3, Team Spirit. First up, there's First Sliver's Chosen, which gives our sliver creatures we control Exalted. So whenever a creature we control attacks alone, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each instant of Exalted among permanents we control. This card can easily make 1 very deadly attacking sliver. We're also running plenty of Anthem effects too, like Predatory Sliver and Muscle Sliver. Each of these are going to give our slivers +1/+1. Next up, we've got 3 that give our slivers +2/+0 with Bone Splitter, Cleaving, and Battle Sliver. And then Might Sliver gives our slivers +2/+2, and Megantic Sliver gives our slivers +3/+3. Finally, perhaps the most impactful out of all of these is Fury Sliver. It's going to give all slivers Double Strike, which makes our slivers hit twice as hard. The more anthems that we can get out early, the quicker things can get out of hand. But let's go through some slivers that help us get even more aggressive in tactic number 4, coming in hot. First up, there's Battering Sliver, which is going to give all of our slivers Trample. The more anthems that we have in play, the more damage we can get through with this. And then Trample also helps Tempered Sliver. It says sliver creatures you control have, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it. The more slivers that we get through, the bigger they become, and the more damage we can get through next time. Next up, we've got 2 ways to give our slivers haste with Heart Sliver and Blur Sliver. Haste in combination with Cascade can be extremely deadly. And finally, we've got Dredgescape Sliver, which gives all of our slivers Unearthed 2. so if we have slivers in the graveyard, we can bring them back for one more attack. We've also got some ways to be a little more defensive with our slivers too. So it's time for us to move on to tactic number 5, Shields Up. First up, there's Sentinel Sliver, which gives all of our slivers vigilance. This allows us to be aggressive and swing out while still being back for blocks. Next up, we've got Striking Sliver, Talon Sliver, and Lancer Sliver, all of which give our slivers First Strike. This makes our slivers harder to block and also harder to be blocked by. First Strike works especially well with Venom Sliver, which makes all of our slivers have Death Touch. Death Touch can be a fantastic way to deter opponents from attacking us and from blocking our creatures. And finally, there's Quick Sliver, which gives all of our slivers Flash. This just allows us to be a lot more flexible with when we're casting spells. Now, we've talked about being both aggressive and defensive, but how do we actually keep this deck going? Let's go over some ways now in tactic number 6, HIVEMIND. First up, we've got some slivers that can help us with Homing Sliver, Hollowhead Sliver, and Opaline Sliver. Homing Sliver says each sliver card in each player's hand has sliver cycling for 3. So by discarding that card, you can search your library for a sliver card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Essentially, this card allows us to use our slivers to tutor for our best slivers. And then Hollowhead Sliver says sliver creatures you control have tap, discard a card, draw a card. Rummaging is a fantastic way to replace any dead cards in our hand. And then Opaline Sliver says all slivers have whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell an opponent controls, you may draw a card. So this can both deter our opponents from actually targeting our slivers or benefit us when they do. We're also running some big ways to draw a ton of cards at once with Shamanic Revelation, Camaraderie, and Collective Unconscious. Each of these are going to draw us a card for each creature that we control. On top of that, Shamanic Revelation is going to gain us 4 life for each creature we control with power 4 or greater. And then Camaraderie gains us X life where X is the number of creatures we control, and all of our creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn. Next up, there's Return of the Wild Speaker, which is a fantastic and flexible card. It says choose 1, draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control, or non-human creatures you control get +3/+3 until end of turn. So this can either draw us a ton of cards or pump our entire army at instant speed. But a good source of repeatable draw comes from Elemental Bond. It's an enchantment that says whenever a creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. It's only going to take 1 or 2 Anthem effects for this to apply to every single one of our creatures. Then the more slivers that we cascade into and get into play, the more cards that we draw. But outside of drawing cards, we've got another way to make sure that we can keep cascading. Let's go through that way now in tactic number 7, a quick nap. First up, there's Leave to Chance, which is a fantastic card in this deck. Leave says return any number of target permanents you own to your hand. Essentially, we can get back any number of slivers that we want back into our hand so that we can recast them to cascade again. And then Chance says discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. So this can help us replace the dead cards in our hand. Now this card can be very effective, but it's nowhere near as effective as the Golden Pig of this deck. The Golden Pig is going to be our number 1 card out of our 99. And the Golden Pig for this deck is Hibernation Sliver. Hibernation Sliver is a 2/2 sliver that costs blue-black. It says all slivers have pay 2 life, return this permanent to its owner's hand. So at any point we can bounce any sliver back to our hand for just 2 life. So this can protect us from board wipes, targeted removal, as well as keeping our cascade going. The amount of value that this can provide us in this deck is absurd. It basically helps us reuse slivers just for cascading. With this in play, it won't take long for us to generate an absurd board position and get way ahead of our opponents. And that's what makes it the Golden Pig. But outside of Hibernation Sliver, we've also got some other ways to protect our slivers and keep them on the board. So let's go through those ways now in tactic number 8, stay where you are. First up, there's Crypt Sliver, which allows our slivers to tap to regenerate target sliver. And then Clot Sliver lets us regenerate slivers by paying 2. Next up, there's Diffusion Sliver, which says whenever a sliver you control becomes a target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, counter that spell or ability unless its controller pays 2. And then Ward Sliver can either help protect or help get our slivers through, because when it comes into play, we choose a color and all slivers have protection from the chosen color. And finally, we've got some board wipe protection with Wrap and Vigor, Golgari Charm, and Ready and Willing. Wrap and Vigor is going to regenerate each creature we control. Golgari Charm can do the same, or it's going to give all creatures -1/-1 until end of turn, or destroy target enchantment. And then Ready says creatures you control are indestructible until end of turn, untap each creature you control. And Willing says creatures you control gain Death Touch and Lifelink until end of turn. Both halves of this card can be very impactful in a lot of situations. Outside of protecting our own things though, how do we deal with our opponent's things? Let's find out in tactic number 9, Out of My Way. First up, there's Hunter Sliver, which gives all slivers Provoke. So whenever a sliver attacks, its controller may have target creature defending player controls untap and block if able. Next up, there's Spiteful Sliver, which says sliver creatures you control have whenever this creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target player or planeswalker. And then Constricting Sliver says sliver creatures you control have when this creature enters the battlefield, you may exile target creature an opponent controls until this creature leaves the battlefield. Outside of slivers, we've got some spells that can deal with most things with Despark and Oblation. Despark says exile target permanent with converted mana cost of 4 or greater. And Oblation is going to make the owner of target non-land permanent shuffled into their library, then draw 2 cards. We can even use Oblation on our own non-land permanent if we need to draw some cards. But after we're set up and we've got a good board position, how do we finish our opponents off? It's time for us to move on to tactic number 10, Swarmed. First up, we've got Two-Headed Sliver and Belligerent Sliver, which give all of our slivers Menace. This makes them much tougher to block and deal with in combat. Some other ways to give them some evasion come from Wig Sliver and Cloud Shredder Sliver. Both give all of our slivers flying, and Cloud Shredder also gives them haste. Next up, there's Virulent Sliver, which gives all of our slivers Poisonous 1. Whenever a Sliver deals combat damage to a player, that player gets a poison counter, and any player with 10 poison counters loses the game. Another way to finish our opponents off comes with Thorncaster Sliver. It says Sliver creatures you control have whenever this creature attacks, it deals 1 damage to any target. This can also come in handy by taking out creatures and planeswalkers too. Next up, there's Leeching Sliver, which says whenever a Sliver you control attacks, defending player loses 1 life. And then Lava Belly Sliver has Sliver creatures you control have when this creature enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to target player or planeswalker and you gain 1 life. So this can take out your opponents while keeping your life total up. And finally, while it's not a Sliver, Warstorm Surge can be huge for this deck. It's an enchantment that says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. Again, the more anthems that we have in play, the more power we have and the more damage we can deal out and quickly finish off our opponents while we're cascading. The First Sliver is a very powerful commander and a lot of fun to build around. Again, a big thanks to Irvin for supporting this channel for over a year now as a general tier patron. If you want to support this channel or want your own deck tech dedicated to you, consider becoming a patron. But now that we've gone through the spells in this deck, let's go on to the mana base. First up, there's Command Tower, which can tap for any color, and Exotic Orchard, which can tap for any color most of the time. Next up, we've got Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, both of which we can tap and sacrifice to get a basic land into play tapped. And then we're running one of the panoramas with Naya Panorama. Next up, there's Warp Landscape, which we can pay 2 and tap to sacrifice to get a basic land into play tapped. And then we're running all 5 Vivid lands with Vivid Crag, Vivid Creek, Vivid Grove, Vivid Meadow, and Vivid Marsh. Next up, we're also running 4 of the Tri-lands with Jungle Shrine, Frontier Bivouac, Savage Lands, and Sandstep Citadel. Finally, we're running 18 basic lands. 8 of those are going to be a forest, 4 will be a mountain, 3 will be a plains, 2 will be a swamp, and 1 will be an island. And now that we've gone through every single card in this deck, let's do a quick price check. A quick reminder that our deck costs are calculated using TCGplayer optimization, optimizing with even heavily played and damaged cards because those cards need a home too. The average First Sliver EDH rec deck will set you back $611.97. Our deck is going to be much more affordable, coming in at $49.90. Again, the price of this deck is the price that I got for it on the day that I'm recording. If you want to see a breakdown of this deck's cost, check out the link in the description. Keep in mind that prices can and will fluctuate and change over time. But with these deck costs, I want to be as transparent as I possibly can. Again, Commander's Quarters decks are about to be tuned and focused within their budget, but there are always ways that we can improve on them. So let's go through some reasonable upgrades now to see what some of those ways just might be. First up, let's add in Path of Ancestry by taking out a swamp. Next up, we're adding in Unclaimed Territory by taking out a plains. And then let's put in Sliver Hive by taking out a mountain. Next up, we're putting in Cryptolith Rite by taking out Traveler's Amulet. And then let's add in Chromatic Lantern by taking out Wanderer's Twig. Finally, let's put in Harmonic Sliver by taking out First Sliver's Chosen. And now it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what you think about this deck and what you think about the commander in general. Also, make sure you check out the Porcine Stand, our limited edition playmat that's only available for the 30-day Kickstarter campaign. Once that campaign ends, it will no longer be available for purchase, so make sure you're backing the campaign before it's too late. And make sure you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons who help make this show possible. I truly couldn't do any of this without your support. If you want to support this channel directly, consider becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, including being able to vote on future commanders for deck techs. There are even tiers where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. You can check out all the Patreon tiers and rewards at patreon.com/commandersquarters. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.